Hey guys, welcome, welcome. How are ya? Hang on a minute and we'll get started. So, welcome. Looked like we had about 15 people waiting for us when we were kind of starting there, and we've got about 50 people signed up for this one, so we'll kind of hang out here for a minute and chat and just see what's going on. So, okay, first off, let's start out. Hi, I'm Rick. If you guys haven't been here before, today we are going to be talking about year-round gardening, and this will be the first of 3 workshops that I'm going to be doing over the next couple of days. So while we're waiting for people to kind of join us, why don't you let me know if you can hear me okay, and if the picture looks all right. Kind of from my point of view, it looks like everything's okay. So let me know if I'm okay, and then tell me where you're from. So what's your garden zone, and where are you from? How cold does it get there? We're from zone 6, and we'll occasionally see winters that get down to about 0. Like very rarely will we see something below 0. That's Fahrenheit, of course. But we do have some pretty solidly cold winters. Every year we'll get down into the single digits for sure. Other than last year. We didn't get down that cold last year, but most years we get pretty chilly here. Not as cold as a lot of you, though. I know a lot of you will have some pretty cold temperatures, especially we're seeing here Ontario and other places like that. So I'm sure you guys are getting pretty cold. Lafayette, Indiana, zone 5. Northern Idaho, zone 6. Montana, zone 4. What else? Who else do we have? Michelle looks like she's from Pennsylvania. Iowa, zone 5. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's kind of get going. We're up to about 40 people here. So I think we'll probably get started. Okay, so first off, a little bit different this time than some of the workshops that I've done here recently. We actually have a workbook that you can get for these workshops. So we're going to do 3 workshops, and this workbook will cover all 3 of them. And so if you are interested in getting that workbook, in the description of this video there's a link that will take you out, and you can grab that workbook. So in order to get the workbook, you do have to give me your email address and sign up for my newsletter email. So just click that, and then it will send you immediately. It will send you an email with a link, so that you can then click and go. And so hopefully I put all that together this morning. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't, let me know, and we'll make sure that we can get you access to that workbook. But you should just be able to click on that link. It will take you over to our website where you can sign up for our email list, and then that will email you the link to the workbook that you can then download, print, whatever you want to do with it, okay? And thank you to my lovely wife, AJ, who prepared that for us. She did an awesome job in putting that workbook together again. Okay, so what else do we have going on here in the chat? Now, so that you guys know, is what I like to do is I've got about 15 or 20 minutes worth of teaching for you, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the year-round gardening masterclass, and then I'll open it up for questions. So if you do have questions as we're going along, you can leave them in the comments if you want, or you can kind of hold them to the end. Either way, I've got one of my assistants is upstairs, and she is taking care of keeping track of all of your questions. And so is what I'll do is we'll kind of hold all the questions till the end, because if I start going off and answering your questions while we're trying to teach, this will take us forever. So my goal is to be done by about the 30-minute mark teaching you guys, and then we'll do 10 minutes or so for questions, whatever we need, okay? All right, so welcome to day 1 of our 3-day series. And so this slide shows you the 3 things that we are going to be talking about over the next 3 days. So everything about year-round gardening, and in particular we're going to be talking about fall and winter gardening, And so today we're going to be talking about 7 base crops that you can be growing in the wintertime, kind of the really workhorse crops that you can grow during the fall and winter. Tomorrow we'll talk about timing, and we'll talk about when you should be planting and getting those crops in. And then on Wednesday, we'll be talking about protecting your crops from the cold weather and things that you can do, including cold frames, hoop houses, and fabric row covers as well. So that is kind of the schedule. Hang around till the end. There is an opportunity to get you a free course. It's the 5 Garden Crops Food Storage course. So there is an opportunity there. So make sure you hang around to the end. Today we are going to be covering the base crops for fall and winter gardening. So there's 7 that I kind of consider the base crops of our fall and winter garden. And we're going to talk about the hardiness of each crop, how to grow them, and then towards the end we'll have some time for some questions, okay? All right, so today's class is kind of designed for those of you that live in zones 3 through 8. If you live in the warmer zones, you'll probably still get some good stuff out of this, but this is really meant for those of you that get some snow, get some cold weather. It would also be beneficial if you can plant some seedlings indoors. And then also, just so that you guys are aware, we are at the end, we're going to talk about the Round Gardening Masterclass, and if that offends you, then this isn't the right workshop for you. So hopefully you won't mind that. I'm just going to spend 3 or 4 minutes talking about that class at the end. All right, so who am I? Rick Stone. I am the founder of the Gardening Academy. I'm also the principal author of Our Stony Acres. I'm a master gardener, and I have been gardening for 23 plus years. We are having an awesome year. I don't know what everybody else's garden is like, but we've had really, really hot this year. But I really babied my soil this spring. We put a lot of compost in, and my garden is just thriving. I am super excited about how it looks this year. So I love gardening and love to do that. So let me talk just a little bit. Let me tell you a story. I'll turn this off so you can see the picture behind. That's me in front of one of our cold frames. In January is when we took that picture. One of the things that we discovered as we were gardening, after we've been gardening for about, 14 years, I think, we noticed that what we ate during the spring and summer especially, we were eating a ton better and a lot more healthy as a family when we had all of that fresh produce from our garden. But despite the fact that we were canning and freezing and things like that, we still, just because we didn't have all that fresh stuff, we weren't eating as well in the wintertime. So we found ourselves eating a lot more junk food, a lot more processed food, and a lot less fresh produce. And so we started kind of investigating and trying to figure out what it was that we could do here in Zone 6 Utah to actually have some produce in the wintertime. And that's when I stumbled across a couple of different books on the topic and some websites that started teaching me. And so this was back in 2009, and we really set a goal that we wanted to be able to have fresh produce from our garden all year long. And so as I studied and learned how to do this, we started our year-round garden in 2009. And so we have had something fresh and available for us in our garden every day since May of 2009. Okay, so since our first spring crops started to be harvested the first part of May in 2009, we've had something fresh ever since. Okay, so that's 12 years that we have had fresh produce from our garden without any interruption. Okay, now did we harvest every day? No, we didn't, but we could have had something to harvest every day if we wanted to. There was always something fresh. So that kind of gives you the idea of the potential of what we can get from this whole year-round gardening concept. Okay, so for those of you that live in zones 8, 9, and 10, this is a pretty easy thing to do. Okay, so the concepts that you're going to learn and the crops that we're going to grow should make it relatively easy for you to have a 365-day-a-year garden. Okay, those of you that live in zones 5, 6, and 7 are probably going to benefit the most from this, because there is a wide variety of crops that you can grow in those zones. like 30 plus crops that you can grow that will help you to extend your growing season. If you live in zones 3 and 4, it is going to be a little bit harder, okay? But you can definitely do it. The number of crops that you can grow in those really cold regions all year long is going to shrink. Now, you'll still be able to extend your growing season a bunch, but kind of the dead of winter when you guys are down in the negatives and really, really cold, there's going to be a pretty limited number of crops that you can grow during that time frame. But it's not going to be impossible, and there are going to be things even for those of you that live in those super cold zones to grow as well. Okay, so that's what's possible for you guys if you grow. Okay, so how to extend your garden. This is again kind of what we're going to talk about over the next couple of days. We need to choose the right crops. You're not going to grow tomatoes in January if you live in zone 6 or zone 4 or zone 8 even. Okay, so you got to choose the right crops. You got to plant them at the right time, and then you've got to have some way to protect them through the winter time. And so that's what we're going to talk about over the next couple of days in these workshops. Okay, all right. So here are the base crops that we are going to grow for fall and winter. Okay, now I call these the base crops. There's actually about 30 total crops that you can grow, but these are kind of the excuse me. These are kind of the workhorses. Okay, these are the ones that are going to form the bulk of what you're going to be harvesting, and then some of the other of those 30 will kind of fill in the gaps, and some of them only can be grown in the fall or the spring, and others just won't produce as much. And so these are kind of those base crops. So we're going to go through all of these crops today and talk about a little bit about each one of them. Okay, all right, it looks like we're up to about 70 viewers, so for those of you that have jumped in, welcome. Let us know where you're from. Okay, here we go. First crop on our list is lettuce. And lettuce is probably the least hardy of the base crops that we're going to grow. There are some winter varieties available. One of them is called Winter Density. Some of the summer crisp lettuces, things like Muir, Concept, Magenta, Nevada, those lettuces, even though they're summer crisp lettuces, they're just so hardy and strong lettuces that they'll also do really well in the wintertime. But lettuce, unlike a lot of the other crops that we're going to talk about, doesn't deal with the super cold temperatures very well. Now, if you want to overwinter lettuce, you can plant some really young plants and get them up so that when you kind of hit the dead part of winter, that those plants are just really small, and then they'll survive. Small plants will survive a little bit better. But for the most part, your lettuce, for us here in zone 6, it's about mid-December. Once you've had several of those nights that have dipped down into the low 20s or even into the teens here in the United States, that's Fahrenheit. When you get those nights that have dropped down like that, 4 or 5 of those successively, is what happens is the lettuce freezes and then it thaws and then it freezes and then it thaws, and it can only handle so many of those cycles, and then it kind of gives up. So lettuce is one of those crops that you're probably going to grow up until about mid-December, and then you're going to replant it in February, and you'll kind of go again. So that's the first of our base crops. Okay, spinach. Let me turn me off so that you guys can see. This is a couple of our cold frames here. So the one in front is spinach, the one in back is lettuce, and this was from a couple of years ago, I believe. And spinach is the real workhorse in a fall and winter garden. Okay, and if you guys didn't catch the webinar that I did a couple of weeks ago, let's see, it was on the 2nd of July. If you didn't catch that one, it's still up and available for you to watch on growing spinach in the winter. It's an amazing crop. If you give it some protection, it's going to do really, really well, and it's the real workhorse of your winter garden. Kind of provides a lot of that bulk, those greens that are really going to give you something to eat. Okay, it's very, very hardy, even in the colder zones. So even those of you that live in zones 3 and 4 should be able to grow some spinach that's available to harvest during the wintertime. So spinach is just a great crop. Most years we will have harvests of about 8 months. Okay, so we'll plant in August. We start harvesting about mid-October, and it'll usually, depends on the year and how warm our spring is. Sometimes we'll make it all the way into May that we're harvesting. So we'll have harvest from mid-October to maybe mid-May. Again, depends on the year a little bit, but that's kind of how things go there with spinach. Okay. All right. Next on the list is Swiss chard. So Swiss chard is as hardy as spinach, but it's not as tasty as spinach. Okay, so we like Swiss chard, but you don't have a Swiss chard salad, right? You can have a spinach salad or a lettuce salad. You can't have a Swiss chard salad. You could put Swiss chard in a salad and it tastes great, but you don't really have that as like an entire salad or course in your meal. So it's a little less versatile that way. The other thing about Swiss chard is those plants can get quite tall. And so you do want to plant your Swiss chard a little bit later in the year than you do your spinach and your lettuce and things like that, just because you don't want your Swiss chard to get really super tall and crowd out other things in your cold frame or your hoop house. And so you want to give it a little bit of space. But if you harvest Swiss chard when it's nice and small, the leaves make a great salad. They're also super good as cooked greens. And then you can, the other nice thing about it is those Swiss chard plants are going to overwinter, and then they'll take off in the spring as well and grow bigger, taller leaves with kind of that heavy, stocky, celery-like stalk that it has that, that then you can kind of use for some of your more traditional Swiss chard dishes. So Swiss chard, another great one, and like I say, it's just as hardy as spinach. It will last really, really long. There are a few Asian greens that you can grow in the winter and the fall as well. Bok choy is a little bit less hardy. It's usually one that kind of gives out about the same time as spinach. Gives out about the same time as lettuce. So it does better in the fall. Tatsoi, which that's what you're seeing here in this picture, is actually super hardy. It's very, very, very hardy and does really well. It's just as hardy as spinach or kale, and will last all through the winter, and gives you a nice it lasts like spinach, has kind of the same texture as spinach, but with a little bit more of a cabbagey taste to it. So a really good crop. Okay. Next on our list is carrots. Okay, and you notice so far that most of what we have talked about growing are leafy greens, and a lot of what we're going to be growing in the wintertime is leafy greens for sure. Carrots, though, are a little bit more bulky, and if you grow carrots in the wintertime, they are going to be the absolute best carrots you have ever eaten. Okay, they are just amazing. We love winter carrots because they get so sweet. So what happens is when the freezing temperatures show up, the sugar or the starches, in the carrots actually turn into sugars, and so they become really sweet, like candy bar sweet. They're just amazing, just really, really good. Now in the fall we have less time for growing than we do in the spring, and so you want to look for smaller varieties of carrots. Okay. You want ones that are maybe 4 to 8 inches tops at maturity. We don't want these big, long 12 or 15-inch carrots that we see some people grow. We just don't have the sunlight in that time of the year to grow those big carrots. And so instead you want to be looking for smaller carrots. So varieties like Littlefinger, Scarlet Nantes, and Napoli are all really good varieties. We grow Littlefinger. That picture that you see there those are Littlefingers, and they do really, really well. Now they can be grown outside and just left out in the garden, and you can maybe cover them with some straw or something like that. The only problem with that is it sometimes is a little bit hard to harvest those. If the ground is frozen, then you can really kind of struggle getting them out of the ground. So I prefer to put them either in a hoop house or a cold frame, and that makes them a little bit easier to harvest because the ground doesn't freeze as hard inside those structures. Okay, mosh. Let me turn this off here so that you guys can see this. Mosh, also sometimes known as corn salad or lamb's lettuce. Mosh is probably the hardiest crop that you can grow in the wintertime. It just does super well, and it even keeps growing, and that's one of the nice things about mosh is everything else like that we talked about so far. As soon as the really low light days of winter come, after we lose about 10 hours of light or less, everything kind of just stops growing and freezes in whatever maturity it's at. But mosh doesn't, okay? Mosh will continue to grow. It likes the low light conditions. It's actually a weed in Europe and places like that, and so it grows really well in the wintertime, and it's just a super nice crop to have. It's just a good solid salad crop. You're going to harvest the whole plant, so it's not like lettuce where you can do cut and come again, or spinach where you just pull off the outer leaves. You just harvest the whole plant, wash it up. It's got a really nice, yummy, nutty flavor to it, so it's kind of got the same texture as lettuce, but a little bit nuttier flavor, if that makes sense. The one thing about mosh is it's pretty difficult to get it to germinate, at least for me in my area where we have kind of hot falls. So you do need to be aware of that you're going to have to baby it a little bit more. You'll have to do a little more watering. Maybe you'll have to put some burlap or something like that down to get it to germinate, because it does like a little bit cooler temperatures to germinate. But great crop. One of those really good staples that kind of goes throughout the whole winter. Okay, and then I do believe this is last on our list. Yep, it is. Okay, last on our list then is kale, and kale has a bad reputation or a good reputation depending on how you look at it. Kale is super good for you, but a lot of people don't like the way it tastes. I didn't used to like the way it tastes. It's grown on me now, and we have kale probably every day. We eat it either from our garden or bought from the store. We'll have kale almost every day because it's really super good for you. The nice thing about kale is that it's almost indestructible. Okay, it is so hardy. All three varieties of kale. So you've got the three types: curly leaf. You've got the red Russian, which that's I think what we're seeing in this picture, or you've got the Lasiano or the dinosaur kale. All three of those do really well in the wintertime. I have found that the curly leaf kale, so varieties like Vates or Winterbore, those seem to be the hardiest of all of them. But again, they're all pretty hard to kill. Okay, so if you offer them some protection in the wintertime, they are going to just last throughout the whole winter. Okay, and if you live in some of the milder areas, so like zone 7 and zone 8 and above, kale doesn't even need any protection. It will just be fine on its own without without any protection. And winter kale is going to be the best kale you've ever tasted. Again, because the cold weather makes it become sweet. And so it actually tastes like a whole different vegetable when you have it in the wintertime. So if you don't like kale in the summer and in the spring and the fall, maybe give some winter kale a chance. When that frost gets on it, it makes it so much sweeter. Okay, and like I say, it lasts forever in the wintertime, and just is a really good crop to have around. Okay, so those are our 7 base crops that you can be growing in the winter and also the fall. You're going to start harvesting these kind of in late fall. We'll talk tomorrow about the timing, but the basic idea is you want these guys to be reaching maturity when your summer garden starts to die off. So when your frost shows up, you want to be able to replace what you're eating from your summer garden, your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your zucchini, all of that kind of stuff. You want to be able to replace that with these crops, and that's what we'll talk about tomorrow, is the timing of that. Okay, all right, so if you guys have some questions, now would be the time. It looks like we're about to 100 people that are here watching right now. So if you have some questions about what I've talked about today, you could start throwing those up in the feed, and we'll get those over here. I'm going to take just about 2 or 3 minutes here to talk to you about the Year-Round Gardening Master Course, and then we'll jump over and I'll answer any questions that you guys might have. Okay? All right, so go ahead and pop those questions up in the feed, and let me turn myself off for a minute here so we can talk about how to become a better gardener. Okay, and of course my opinion is best way to learn to become a better gardener is to join me, right? And the year-round gardening masterclass. So we have a year-round gardening masterclass, which is it's our most popular course that I've ever done. I have probably about 2,500 people that have taken the course over the last 6 years. This is one that we've had up for a long time, and it's very popular. We have made a lot of changes to this course over the last few years that have made it even more kind of appealing to you. So this is what you get with the Year-Round Gardening Master Course. It includes 5.5 hours of video instruction, pre-recorded video, which, by the way, you get to watch anytime you want. Okay, so this isn't like just a one-time watch or anything like that. You can rewatch it anytime you want, and then you'll be able to just have access to it all the time. Okay, we also do a weekly study guide for the first 4 weeks of the course. We will do a study guide where we kind of go through and go through the details of the course, so that you guys can kind of follow through with me, and we'll go through and dig into the information that's there. And then these are things that we have added here the last 2 or 3 years that have been very popular. So we do 4 Q&A sessions. So for the next 4 weeks, starting on July 22nd, I'm going to do a weekly live Q&A session. And in the past, we've done that in our private Facebook group. This year, we're going to try and see what it's like on a Zoom call. I'm a little bit worried about that. We do Zoom for in the Gardening Academy. We do a Zoom call, but we don't have, that group is a little bit smaller. Usually, we'll end up with about 100 people that join during this launch. And so I'm going to try it on Zoom and see how it goes. And if it ends up being too hard to manage, then maybe we'll go back to the Facebook group. But we're going to give it a go on Zoom and see how the Q&A sessions go. And so you'll be able to, we'll just go live on a Zoom call, and people submit their questions and I answer them, and then you can ask follow-up questions and stuff like that. And that has been really super popular, one of the most popular parts of the course. And then we do have a private Facebook group where you can join and kind of share your successes and questions, etc., even after we're outside the 4 weeks of the course. And the other thing is this is an ongoing, when you buy this course, it's ongoing, which means next year when we do the launch, you'll be able to be part of it again, and you'll be able to ask your questions again and continue to go through it. Okay. All right, so we are currently open for new students with the year-round gardening course. Because I do so much work on this course, this isn't one that I leave open all the time. Okay. I will only have it open from July 6th through July 16th. We bring in a big group of people, and then we'll kind of take you through that course. And so we only open it twice a year. Now and then at Thanksgiving time is the only times that we open it. So if you would like to join, you need to jump on and get in there right now, because we are closing on Friday. Okay, so ongoing access to the course is $69, but because you guys have watched this webinar, I'm going to give you $10 off. So there is a link down in the description. If you click on that link, it will take you out, and you can learn more about the master course, and then that will apply a $10 coupon to your purchase. So that'll save you $10, okay? All right, and then bonus for everybody that joins through that link, you guys will get a free course, which is my 5 garden crops for food storage, which is about a 45-minute course that we have for you to watch there as well. So you'll get that one free. So you'll get 2 courses for the price of 1. Okay, really simple to actually go sign up. You'll click on the link. It'll take you to the page that looks just like this. You'll click on the enroll, and then it's going to take you here. You'll put in your information, put in your credit card information here. You can also buy this course using PayPal, and then you're just going to submit, and away you go. Pretty simple for you to do it, okay? All right, so I would love to have you guys join me in the master course. A lot of people have already joined. We already have 30 plus people that have joined this year, and usually it's the last 3 or 4 days where we really get the big surge. So I would imagine we'll be pretty close to, between 80 to 100 people again. So it's a fun environment, just a great course. And like I say, this is the one time a year that we do the whole big thing. So if you would like to join, I would love to have you come and join us there, okay? All right, enough salesmanship. Let's look at questions, okay? All right. So for our first question is, what root vegetables do you recommend? Hang on, let me turn myself back on here so you guys can see me, and we'll even make myself a little bit bigger. Okay, so what root vegetables do you recommend? So for winter gardening, the best root vegetable is going to be carrots. Okay, they're going to be the most hardy, although parsnips are the same. But parsnips are kind of a different beast. They have a very long growing season, like it takes about 120 days for them to mature. So if you want parsnips, you actually need to start planting them now. But parsnips are also very hardy. The other root crops, things like beets and turnips and radishes, are not quite as hardy. So you're going to want, if you want to plant those in the fall, you're going to want to make sure that you have those harvested before the really, really cold weather settles in, okay? Because they just don't hold up as well as your carrots do. Although beets do a pretty good job, but you know, those are the ones that I would plant for that time of year. And then I would kind of focus on getting the radishes first, then the turnips, then the beets, then the carrots is kind of how I would progress through eating those, so that, because the carrots are going to last the longest in the wintertime, okay? All right, next on our list is, do I have any tips for starting fall and winter seeds outdoors for transplants if indoor seed starting is not possible? It's a little bit tough in the summertime to start seedlings outdoors because it's so hot. So the seeds that we're going to be talking about starting would be things like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, you know, things like that. And those seeds are not going to do well out in the heat. You know, like this time of year, because, you know, right now, if you were going to grow broccoli or something like that, now would be the time for starting those. So I might just say that your garden is going to be probably things that you can start from seeds. So lettuce, kale, spinach, carrots, all of those things that you're going to start from seed, because, you know, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, in the hot heat of the summer, they're not going to do very well as seedlings. You could give it a try, but they're not going to do as well. So unfortunately, I don't really have a solution for you there. What can you plant in Utah right now? What's a good crop? So this is a little not fall and winter gardening related question, but that's okay. Right now, you could be growing, still planting beans. You could plant zucchini or crookneck squash or even patapan squash. All of those would still do okay. It's almost time for us to start our fall planting of peas. Now, fall peas don't do as well as spring peas do, but you could plant some fall peas. You could plant some beets this time of year. And then that's probably about it right now. So beans, summer squashes, beets, peas, okay? And then a couple of weeks from now, in most of the Utah places, you're going to be looking at starting your fall crops, okay? And we'll talk more about that tomorrow in tomorrow's, okay? Is winter garden a possibility in MN? I'm not sure if that's Michigan or Minnesota, but I'm not sure it matters. Yes, definitely it is. I don't know what zone you are. It depends. You know, if you're a zone 5, then pretty much everything we talked about today is going to grow. But if you're a zone 3 or a zone 4, you're going to have a little bit harder time. You're going to be, you know, focusing on things like carrots and spinach and Swiss chard and kale and mosh will probably be the only things that will really make it all the way through the winter for you. But you should still be able to have, you know, it just depends, and I don't know exactly what your zone is, but you know, you should definitely be able to get some things to grow, or at a bare minimum, you should be able to really extend your growing season. So instead of being done in October, you could be, you know, middle of November or later before you're really finished off by using kind of these same principles, okay? Do I direct sow or start seed indoors for winter garden? Yes, both. All of the broccoli family you are going to plant indoors. Okay, so you're going to start those indoors about 12 weeks before your last frost. The others, like lettuce, you could do either way with lettuce, and I usually will start some lettuce, plus I'll plant some outside. But then everything else you're just going to plant from seed. So your Swiss chard, your beets, your kale. Kale you could do either way. Carrots, obviously, all of your root crops you have to start from seed. So basically, the cabbage family, broccoli family plants, you're going to do transplants. Everything else can be planted from seed, or you could do seedlings if you wanted as well. Okay. Let's see. Whoops, I almost missed one. I am in Maryland, Zone 7. Should I start planting for fall now or wait? If not for fall, can I still plant and harvest something before the first frost? So, Zone 7, Maryland, I would imagine that you are going to be able to still get things like summer squash, and probably aren't any winter squashes that you're probably running out of time for those. It really kind of depends. The most important thing for you is when your frost date is. So if you still have 100 days until you have frost, then you could pretty much plant whatever you want, warm season wise. In Zone 7, again, it really depends, and tomorrow we'll talk a lot more about frost dates, but we start our fall and winter crops about 6 to 8 weeks before your first fall frost. So figure out when that frost is, and that's kind of what we're going to target, okay? All right, can you grow potatoes in the cold? No, although there are people that will overwinter potatoes, so they'll plant some potatoes in the fall, let them sit in the ground, and then they'll come up early in the spring. But you can't actually grow and harvest potatoes. Potatoes, the tops are not hardy enough to survive the cold weather. So once it gets cold and frosty, those tops are going to die, and so you can't really grow them through the winter in the colder zones. Now, it's different if you live in, like 8, 9, and 10, but especially 9 and 10. But yeah, for those of us that live in the colder zones, really the only thing you could do is maybe plant them in the fall. But I found that they do just as well to plant them in the spring, so it kind of up to you on that, okay? But you definitely can't harvest them during the wintertime. The list of 30 crops, you got by the course for that, sorry. Somebody asked if you could have a complete list of 30 crops, and that's in the course, okay? Zone 5, looks like we answered that one already. Can you grow potatoes in the fall and winter? Can you plant in a raised bed with a protection, a hoop house for winter, or should you use a cold frame? That depends on where you live, okay? If you live in zones 5, 6, or really zone 6 or below, you're probably going to be better off with a cold frame. And we'll talk about Wednesday, that's our topic, is cold frames and hoop houses, so we'll talk more about that then. The one issue you have with raised beds is they freeze faster than in the ground. So I would probably, if it were me, I would most likely put, depending on what crop I'm growing. If I'm growing kale or something like that, a hoop house would be fine in raised beds. But if you were growing others, I might want to have a cold frame because they provide a little more heat, okay? All right, when can you plant rutabagas, collard greens, and carrots in Zone 7B? Okay, so your rutabagas, you're going to have to look at your maturity dates on those. I don't grow rutabagas, and so off the top of my head, I don't have an answer for you on that. Collard greens and carrots, both of those you're going to start planting about 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost. Okay, that's your target date. In the course, will I go over suggestions for the types of frost cloths, plastics for low tunnels, and cold frames, etc.? Yes. So we go into a big detail on all of those items. So we have big long lectures on each of those that we go through, and then I can answer any questions for you in the Q&As as well. I've heard that you can direct sow cucumbers right now for another small harvest later in the season. What are your thoughts? Zones 4 and 5. The key is whether or not you have time before your first frost. Okay, So if your first frost is September 15th in zone 4 or 5, you probably don't have enough time left because we're almost to the middle of July, and cucumbers usually take at least 60 days to mature. Okay, if your first frost date is later, so like maybe October 15th, then you might actually still be able to pull it off. But I leave cucumbers off my July planting just because it's really kind of iffy. But it's really based on how long you have until frost comes. So if you've got 90 days till frost comes, yes, you'll be able to get a small harvest. If you only have 60 days till frost comes, you'll likely get 1 or 2. So that's kind of how it goes with cucumbers, okay? Is it too late for watermelon in zone 9? I would have to look that up to be exactly sure, but I don't think so. You've got plenty of time until frosty weather. The only thing I would be a little bit worried about is whether or not you have enough sunlight later on in the year. So it depends on what zone 9 you live in. If you're in a southern zone 9, then you're probably still okay. If you live in Seattle, that's zone 9 too. You're probably not going to have enough sunlight to pull it off. So it really kind of depends on where you live. Okay. When should I start my fall crops? I live in zone 10B, and you don't really have a frost date, so it's a little bit tougher in those warm zones. So if you want to jump over to our website, you can actually take a look. We've got some planting guides for zones 9 and 10, and that will give you a little bit better idea. Off the top of my head, I'd have to go look at my stuff, but you're going to be, your fall crops you're going to be planting probably late September and October is kind of your target for those fall crops, so that they start maturing in December and January. But go take a look at my planting guides, because off the top of my head I can't remember the exact dates on those. Okay. All right. Are cabbage moths a problem for winter gardens, or are there other pests that you have to worry about? Cabbage moths are usually a lot less of an issue in the fall, but they're not non-existent. Okay. So my recommendation always for cabbage moths, if you have a problem with them in your area, is that you cover your plants with a light fabric row cover. Okay. So if you throw that fabric row cover, or they have this kind of really thin netting stuff too that you can buy. You throw it over your plants, maybe put a hoop house up and just throw it over the top. That keeps the moths from getting to your plants, and then you don't have a problem. Okay. So, but they're not for the for cabbage and broccoli and kale and stuff like that. It's a little bit less in the fall, but it's not non-existent. So you still have to be vigilant. Okay. Other pests, if you're a cold weather, like a zone 7 or below, there's usually not a lot of pests. The only other issue that I've really had is occasionally I'll have a snail that survives a little bit longer than it should in my cold frame, and that'll eat some things. So slugs or snails can be an issue, but they're usually pretty easy to deal with. The other thing that you can still struggle with is aphids, especially if you happen to have a warm winter, and so we don't get a lot of cold. They'll continue to have a problem. So you need to watch out for aphids and make sure that you kind of tame them. Okay? All right. Let's look. I'm just going to... That's all the ones we have on my list. Oh, here we go. Parsnips versus carrots. Zone 5B. Marcy, on that one, the only thing that you're going to have to worry about with parsnips is whether or not you have enough time. So get them planted right away. Parsnips take a lot longer to grow than carrots. So if you like parsnips, they're going to be just as hardy. They're going to be nice and sweet in the winter, just like the carrots will be. So just get them in right away, and you should be okay. All right. Okay. Well, that looks like the end of our questions. We're at about 43 minutes right now. So thank you guys for coming today and being a part of this. Don't forget that the special ends July 16th for the Year-Round Gardening Master Course. And so the link is down in the description. Click on that. Go join us. I really know that you guys are going to love the Master Course, because we do all kinds of instruction, plus we do the live Q&As. And so it's an awesome course, and everybody that's taken it loves it. So I think you're really going to like that. Okay. Tomorrow, July 14th, let me turn myself off so you can see the whole slide. Tomorrow, July 14th, same time, 1:30 Mountain Time, we are going to be talking about timing of our planting. So when we should be planting our fall and winter crops. I'll give you some calculations that you can use so that you know when, based on your frost dates, you should be getting your crops in. Okay, so same place tomorrow, 1:30. We'll cover that. Okay, so hopefully you guys will have that. And then for those of you that are watching this on the replay, all of the offers are still good until the 16th as well. Okay. All right, great. Guys, I think that we will call it quits. We're at 45 minutes. We had more than 100 people here today, so thank you for being here, and appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. This one went really well. Great questions, so I appreciate your participation and being here today. Okay? All right, guys, thanks. We'll see you tomorrow.